Welcome to the Standards of Excellence tutorial on how to manage your chapter submission from start to finish. This video will only cover suggestions on managing the standards process. However, if your chapter has a creative way to adapt these suggestions to work for you, you should do it. We hope that this tutorial will aid your organization in creating your management strategy. First, let's cover the basics. If you have not reviewed the resources on the FSL website for Standards of Excellence, you should start there. The resources have recently been updated for your chapter and to improve your experience. Additionally, there's a large selection of tutorial videos at the bottom of the FSL website. We highly encourage you to begin exploring these resources as your first step. Next, towards the bottom of the SOE website, you will find a timeline for the Standards of Excellence process. This timeline will be a guide we cover in this video, but it is an excellent resource to review. At the beginning of the annual timeline, the deadline for Standards of Excellence will always be December 31st of each year and will include the required submission of the 4 SOE sections, the self-evaluation, and the awards nomination packet. In January and February of each year, chapters will also conduct their SOE presentations to a panel of staff, faculty, and peers. This process is detailed in the presentation guide if you are seeking more information. January is also an excellent time for a new leadership team to become familiar with the Standards of Excellence process for chapters transitioning annually. For the rest of winter term, any updates to the program will be shared, and learning about SOE would be a great use of a chapter's time. Again, SOE is not something a chapter should begin in November to be successful with their submission. Now, moving into spring term, any chapter who did not meet standards or 60% of the point total in the previous year will need to complete the performance improvement steps with their chapter coach. Chapters should be focusing on how to collect documentation in spring term and how they can improve their score from the previous year. And now, summer. Summer is not a time of significant SOE completion. However, if chapters host an alumni barbecue or recruitment practice with parents, they should continue to track completion of these standards. This would also be a great time to begin thinking about the award submission if a chapter has not done so already. And now into fall. Chapters should continue to collect the documentation for Standards of Excellence and fine-tune their submission materials. In November, chapters should begin considering who will be on their presentation team. We highly suggest that the presentation team include both an outgoing officer and incoming officer for the chapters that transition annually. This ensures that information is transitioned between the two leadership teams. And, of course, the chapter should prepare for submitting their materials by December 31st. The submission links can be found on the FSL website. Now let's transition into tips for managing the Standards of Excellence process as a chapter officer. We have collected a few tips from former leaders and advisors on what they found helpful along the way. The first tip we have for the SOE process is becoming comfortable with delegation. This process is not something a single leader can complete on their own. We suggest delegating the sections to teams that are appropriate. For example, the membership development section includes academics, member education, and leadership experiences. This would be a great thing to delegate to your academic chair, new member education chair, your continuing education chair, and your campus activities chair. Additionally, we suggest making a point person responsible for each section and submission document. Continuing with the membership development example, the point person may be your chapter's vice president of membership development to lead and motivate the group to complete the steps for their section. Our second tip is to make an accountability structure for your team. Whether this is a timeline or sharing drive that everyone has access to, you will need to find ways to ensure the accumulation of materials and tracking of events is occurring. A great way to check in would be to set time at the first meeting of the month to make sure that all documentation for the previous month has been completed. This management style allows for the chapter to go back 1 month to find appropriate documentation rather than having to compile a year's worth of documentation at the end. The next tip we would share is plan ahead. A chapter leadership team will be stretched thin if trying to complete SOE in an unrealistic time frame. Your chapter will benefit from having SOE discussions early in your term and often. If your chapter transitions during the annual calendar, SOE should be a larger discussion in your transition. Chapter leaders who drop SOE on their new officer or do not prepare them during transition have set the predecessor up to fail in this process. We hope this overview has been a helpful tool in navigating the new resources available to your chapter through the Standards of Excellence. As mentioned previously, we hope to add resources and continue to evolve this program for the UO experience with feedback. For chapters who are beginning their submission process, please review the other tutorial videos on the FSL website, as questions about the submission documents and more can be answered there. Of course, if you have any additional questions that cannot be answered by this page of resources, please reach out to your chapter coach for additional support.